Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today I have for you a couple comics, focusing on Qui Gonn and Obi Wan, a couple Star Wars tales, and a short story. And then I'll be taking my small break because of the Dune movie coming out in October. I want to make sure I read the novel for the first time ever, and I, of course, will be sharing that with you. And then right when I return, we'll be starting with Jedi Council Acts of War comic 4-issue series when I come back. But as for the present, sorry, we have two short stories, I forgot. But we start with Qui Gonn and Obi Wan Orient Express. So this is just a 2-issue comic. With this comic issue, I can't really say this is some phenomenal stuff. This is no Jedi Apprentice series by any means. It's fine. It's a fine, okay story. There's nothing particularly great about it. However, if you just love the relationship, if you love this era of just Qui Gonn and Obi Wan before Qui Gonn kicks the bucket, you know, and you just need more stories with Qui Gonn and Obi Wan, this is a nice palate cleanser. But there's nothing really special or worthy of note within the story itself. But it is an okay story. It's nothing you'll remember, really. You know, like, after you've read, like, 5 other things after reading it, you'll completely forget about it. But it's a serviceable story, and we get to see those two together again. So that's what matters. And that's where you would read it chronologically next. Then right after that, you have the 4-issue series, Last Stand on Ord Mantell by Ryder Wynnum. I have not read everything by Ryder Wynnum. Ryder Wynnum is kind of a big name, at least from what I've heard from Matt Wilkins, so you should go subscribe to if you have not. He did a lot of the children's stuff, or like young adult stuff. I think Ryder Wynnum, I could be wrong about this, I probably am. If not Galaxy Fear, he worked on another young adult series for Star Wars, and he's written a couple short stories here and there, I think. But yeah, Last Stand on Ord Mantell is a 3-issue comic series. Obviously it's on Ord Mantell. It's really cool. You actually get to see Chancellor Valorum in this. Obi-Wan and Qui Gonn are, of course, tasked with the mission to go save somebody. It becomes a whole other thing with the planet Ord Mantell, and this swindler who's saying he has the Force, but he doesn't. And these monsters that also, aliens that also live on the planet, and conflicts that arise there. Again, in the sense that the story overall is kind of forgettable, but that was a lot of Jedi Apprentice too. The beauty, the story that you come for in Jedi Apprentice is not the plot that gets everything moving forward. That's just stuff in the background. The stuff you came for was for the character development with Qui Gonn and Obi Wan. Now, this does not really have character development like the Jedi Apprentice series does, but I think it's more in line with the characters at this point in the books, than with the Orient Express one. Again, the story's kind of forgettable, but it was still it was a much more, not that the other one wasn't enjoyable, it was fine. It was like watching, that sounds kind of mean, it was like, you know, like you get up in the morning when you're like 7 years old and you go put on some SpongeBob, like it's fun, it's good, but you won't remember it. Like, it's one of the not as good episodes of SpongeBob. You kind of forget about it until you rewatch and go, oh yeah, I watched that. That's what Orient Express felt like. But this was genuinely fun the whole way through, and I really enjoyed it. I don't care for the art. I miss the art from Legacy comics, and I know we'll see that again when we get to the Republic comics, at least during the Clone Wars era. But, you know, it's suitable, it works. After that, we have Aura's Song. Now, this you can find in re-released packages of Menace Revealed, which it's a collection of multiple different comic books put into one book. But I actually just looked up the individual thing online. because it originally came from a Dark Horse like special like comic thing, which was Dark Horse presents Girls Rule. It was like 64 pages of multiple franchises focusing on female characters. And so in this little comic strip, we got Aura's Song, or Aura Sing, from, I think the story is called Aura's Song, but her name's Aura Sing. And the funny thing about her is, even though a lot of people don't like the TCW's portrayal of her because of everything that the expanded universe has done with her, it's still amazing to me how, and this is the beauty of the expanded universe, because, you know, even back then with TCW, even though Baloney didn't seem to care about the other people's creations, you know, like he didn't try to fit it all together, you know, this is a character that was in a single shot of episode 1, right? She literally, you know, when Anakin's doing the pod race, she's there for like a fraction of a second. She looks at the pod race. That's it. That's the only scene she has in the movies. She's not relevant in the movies, and yet she becomes such a big character in the expanded universe, which I love. Even Han and Leia, I don't remember which series it was. I think it was Legacy of the Force, but in one of the much later series of the Star Wars expanded universe, even Han and Leia meet this person. So she has a long-lasting life, apparently. But one thing I did not know about Aura's character is that, I knew she was a former Jedi. She was a Jedi who turned and decided to live a life of a bounty hunter and hated the Jedi for reasons I'm not exactly sure. But what I did learn in this short comic strip was that she was trained by the Inzadi. Now, for those of you who don't know who the Inzadi are, they are one of the most terrifying things in all of Star Wars. Think space vampires, okay? For the Inzadi, for those who don't know. Except that these space vampires don't give you a little kiss on the neck as they suck your blood out. No, what they do is they have little tendrils on their cheeks that come slithering out like a snake. They put it up your nose. They start sucking your brain juices until you start crying blood out your eyeballs, and then you die. That's the Inzadi. Imagine that creeping on you at nighttime, and you're in your bed trying to go to bed. Next thing you know, you have these little tendrils going up your nostrils into your brain, having your juices sucked out. That's terrifying. That's horrifying. One of the worst things in all of Star Wars. I freaking hate them. They creep me out. Of course, we don't only get to see any of that in this series, or in this little comic strip, but it is interesting to learn that there's like a guild. I don't know if it's like all the Inzadi or just a specific Assassin's Guild of Inzadi, but Aura Song was trained by them. In the short story, it begins with, apparently she's been kidnapped by this guy who was always, this Inzadi that was always infatuated with her. But she, of course, had no interest. And by the end of it, well, we know she's in episode 1, so she must get free. Overall, it's pretty okay. It's an okay little short. If you like Aura's Song, I think it's worth your time, or Aura Sing. And even if you don't, I mean, I know nothing about her except for, you know, what I've heard about and what I've seen in TCW, which apparently is not the best portrayal of her anyway. So that was actually really interesting, and I know she has some story arcs to come later on, like after episode 1, so I'm excited to see some of that. But definitely, I think worth your time if you can track it down. Whether it be in the Menace Revealed, where you will get that short story, it will be added in the collection, or if you know, want to actually try to find that, you know, original thing. Next up, this is basically a prequel short story for a later novel we'll be reviewing called Maul Lockdown. But this is just a short story that would take place around here called The Cyrox Redemption by Joe Schreiber. This was in Star Wars Insider number 146. First thing you have to know is this is first person, so if you're like Matt Wilkins, you're going to hate this short story because it's in first person. Things we learn in this short story is we follow a character named Zero. I think he's like a Twi'lek, and he smuggles things into Hive. Hive is this big giant, if you can hear that, I apologize. Hive is this big giant prison thing, and all the prisoners who are inside the Hive because the hive houses some of the biggest scum and scum in the known galaxy, like murderers, probably some rapists, though you're not going to hear that word because it's Star Wars. Just think of the worst things you can imagine. A lot of those people are in this prison. But what the prison likes to do, since it's so far away from the core worlds and stuff, is it has gladiatorial fights between the prisoners. So, as far as I understood it, the walls, like, you'll be in your cell, right? And at random intervals, you'll never know when it's your time. The walls will twist and turn so you are facing someone else in their own cell. And you must fight to the death, and whoever lives gets to continue living a life in prison while the other is dead. And that's kind of the essential premise of that hive, which sounds awesome, which means I am excited to see Maul get locked up in there and kick some freaking butt. That sounds wonderful. So I'm looking forward to that book. But, because just from that promising premise alone, that seems like that's going to be a hell of a time. But yeah, we, in this short story, Zero meets this character who has, like, this weird, like, contorted stomach. And he's like, what's up with that, bro? And you learn about this parasite from his homeworld that's, like, this big, giant, like, white-looking, like, thing that comes out of him. And, it's apparently a parasite. Like, the planet has to constantly filter their waters. This guy ran away from home, and he got this thing inside him. And it's pretty disturbing. By the end of the story, he's just curled up in a corner. A guard comes and gets him because apparently he called for Zero's name. And he says, it's coming, it's coming. And it comes out of him. It comes out of his, like, mouth. And it's just described as one of the most scary looking things you can think of. And Zero just goes as fast as he can with his boots and bashes its head in before it can do anything. But the way the story ends is he says, but what if I didn't get all of it? What if part of it escaped? And is crawling around in the walls? And then the story just kind of ends. So will that become a thing? Will there be a big giant monster for Maul to fight at the end of Maul Lockdown? I don't know. We'll have to find out when we read the novel. But that's it for the short story, which you would read here, Cyrock's Redemption by Joe Schreiber, Star Wars Insider 146. Now we get to... Sorry, it's garbage. We get to some Star Wars Tales. So, Star Wars Tales, number 1, Life, Death, and the Living Force. This is a little short comic with Qui Gonn and Obi Wan. It's okay. It's certainly not one of the bad stories. We already have some coming up. It's a decent, okay story. If you just, if you like Qui Gonn and Obi Wan, you just need more of that. However slim it might be, since we know he's gonna kick the bucket in episode 1. So we have, even though we have all that Jedi Apprentice series, we still don't have that many stories with Qui Gonn. So if you just wanted more Qui Gonn and Obi Wan, it's an okay story that you would read about here. After that, you have Star Wars Tales number 7, Jedi Chef. A Jedi has to have a cooking contest to impress a Hutt with Plo Koon there, not acting like Plo Koon. It's stupid. Skip it. Star Wars Tales number 10, Nameless. This was okay too. It's not really necessary. I mean, most Star Wars Tales isn't. The art's kind of horrible. I hate the art. It's garbage. But the story itself is Basically, Maul has, he's using a single hilt lightsaber like most people do. And he's tasked with, there's this old Jedi who hasn't, is like, decided to live in seclusion for the remainder of his years, and he's away from the Jedi Order. He's, he's at a place where there's no comm communication. He's all by his lonesome in this big forest planet or whatever. And, but he used to be like a really good, like, Jedi Master. So, to test Maul, Sidious orders him to, go kill this master. So Maul tries to fight the dude. The dude just has like a freaking big giant stick, like that crab-looking guy from the old Tales of the Jedi comics. And Maul can't beat this dude. He has a lightsaber and he can't beat a dude with a stick. So he runs off angry. But he's like, I know how to beat this dude. And he constructs a new lightsaber that is a double-bladed end. And so when he comes back, he tricks the Jedi because he lets the Jedi, like, whack him in the face. So that way his arm goes like this. Like, oh, no, you hit me. And his arm's right behind the guy's back. He's like, you fool, you thought you could beat me, but you pulled the same trick you did last time. I thought you would learn your lesson or whatever. But then Maul turns on the other end. And then the Jedi gets impaled. Sidious congratulates him on succeeding in his mission. Again, it's whatever. It's an okay story. If you like Maul, then I guess you might enjoy this. You know, I like Maul too. But there's nothing really special. It's okay. Nor did I ever need to know why he switched from, or why he decided to use a double blade lightsaber. But, you know, it works, and it's fine. And that's where you read it there. It's at least far superior to Jedi Chef. After this, we have the last thing. Actually, that's not true. We have the last, like, big thing I'm going to talk about, which was in Star Wars Gamer #2, The Monster by Daniel Wallace. So The Monster, you know who the main character of this book is? Or this short story is? You know what I freaking love the expanded universe for? For fleshing out characters that basically had no character? Do you remember Panaka? Does that name not sound familiar to you? Do you remember that black guy who follows Padme around and is super loyal and cool? At least I thought he was cool when I watched episode 1. You remember that guy? Well, that's the main character of this book. And I freaking love that. Because he's just kind of a background character. I mean, I guess he's a side character. But he doesn't have that much to do in the movies. So the fact that this guy, that Daniel decided to give him his own short story, I freaking love that. I love that. That was great. I was like, that's genius. Thank you. Because he's like a cop or whatever. So you could do something with that. And it's all on Naboo. And actually kind of slightly ties in with like the Darth Plagueis novel and things. So that was cool. But yeah, so we're following him around. And it's funny. They even talk about in the short story, you know, when they're off duty, you know, the police officers and stuff, they're trying, you know, like, goof off and joke around, and Panaka just doesn't know how to do that. Like, he's a very, like, stickler, stick up his butt, like, straight down to the brass tacks sort of guy. Like, he just doesn't have time for fraternization. He doesn't care about it. But he's like, look, I understand I'm not going to make any friends because I just can't be sociable like them. I know my duty. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. But if I can't have friends, I will have their respect. You know, because there's no point in me pretending to be something I'm not. So I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, become the biggest leader in the police force, and they might not all like me, they might not all, you know, necessarily be my friend, but they will all respect me for my hard work. And that was pretty cool. But also, we've seen here, the story begins, and you're like, what the fudge are they doing? Because they're chasing down. They describe it as a monster until you find out that the thing they're chasing down, sorry, that the thing they're chasing down is a Gungan. Because apparently he was committing some illegal acts. And, you know, Panaka is kind of racist toward the Gungan. Or speciesist. Which helps set up things for episode 1, because there has been racial tension, or species tension, between these two people, and only by episode 1 do they unify. Even though, well, it's a victory in episode 1, it's one step to destruction. But anyway, we also find out about, I think, this human crook who's trying to help the Gungans and stuff. And so most of the short story is Panaka trying to find this guy, because somebody else got shot, if I remember correctly, but it wasn't from the Gungan, so they suspected it must be like a second accomplice, and that was like some human dude. And he's like, bro, you don't understand, like the Gungans need help, and us humans are being stupid and whatnot. And so, but you know, him being the patriotic cop that he is, he's like, okay, but I still gotta put you in. Interestingly enough, Sate Pestage, who's like one of the biggest politicians for Palpatine, and he's even like in episode 6. I think there's like a single shot where you can see Sate Pestage. But if that's not episode 6, then it's something else. But he's here doing stuff for Palpatine. And by the end of it, the Crook's gonna like tell like Panaka something, and Sate Pestage just happens to be there and shoots the guy. He's like, man, I saved you. What do you mean? And he can't tell him whatever he was going to tell him. But yeah, that was basically it. I really enjoyed it. For a short story, to be able to get a character who, you know, isn't a big part of the movies, and to give them, you know, sort of a main role, even if it's just a short story, I really enjoyed it, because that's the wonders of the expanded universe, is taking characters who really didn't have anything in the movies and fleshing them out into something. You know, it's one of the wonderful things about, like, I always say about Wedge Antilles, you know, he was in 4, 5, and 6, but, you know, we maybe recognized him because we'd see the same face on the pilot and be like, yo, he's in all these major battles, he must be pretty cool, but you don't know anything about him. But then the X-Wing novels changed that. You got to actually know more about Wedge. You got to actually see him as a character and fall in love with him. It's the same thing with Admiral Akbar. I love Admiral Akbar in the expanded universe. But they got to be novels. This is just a short story. But still, it just, like, you know, it's such a background character that, like, why would you do this? Like, that's not really a selling point for a short story, but it doesn't matter, because it fleshes out the universe and gives more character to a character we'll see in episode 1. So I just appreciate that a lot, and I think that's really cool. But somehow this ended up being 22 minutes, even though all this is shorter than other stuff I've talked about in the past. Whatever. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps out a ton. I hope also my trying to do this in chronological order as best I know how, because I steal Matt Wilkins' quotes, can help you enjoy the expanded universe, maybe in a different way if you didn't know about all these short stories or anything. But, yeah, thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you again in probably a month with more Star Wars, because I'm going to be reading Dune. But hope you all continue to join me as I go through a lot of the expanded universe for the first time, then going over some stuff again for the second time. And yeah, until next time, guys, stay safe.